In Age of Mythology, early game build orders can be a bit confusing, as you need to understand the map layout before you pick the build order to get you to the classical age in a decent time. However, the easiest civ for early macro is the Atlanteans, which we're going to cover today. One citizen pretty much equals 3 Greek villages, so there's less macro you need to do throughout the game, and it makes the early game much more cookie cutter and streamlined than any other civ. If you want to get into Age of Mythology multiplayer before Retold, this is the civ to start with, as you'll be able to follow this build and get straight into the action. Same as the previous videos from this series, I'll be dropping a graphic of all the builds on my Discord, link will be in the description. I've made it so it works great to save on your phone. Just open up the picture as the game's loading in and zoom into the build you need. Let's get right into the first build. This is the 430 Atlantean build, and this can pretty much be done on the majority of maps if you have Hunt in your starting line of sight. Unlike the other civs, you don't need perfect Hunt in your starting line of sight, or even just a little bit. It's just whatever the map gives you. If you have Hunt, this is perfect. First of all, you want to drop your economic guild and research hunting dogs straight away, as this improves your gather rate of the hunt, and this is crucial for this build. Your second villager to come out also wants to go on the hunt, and this is the equivalent of having 6 Greek villagers. This is why the Atlanteans are so much easier than any other civ, because you really don't have to worry about it. Even your scouters, you can just leave them here. You can also scout by moving them individually. I've actually done a video of that quite a while ago, of which is better to do, and leaving them still is perfectly fine. It's slightly better to move them around, but it's not a big deal. The third villager will then move on to wood, and then you might have guessed it, the next one will move on to gold. This is very similar to the Greek build, where we would want 4 on food, then 2 on the wood, then 2 on the gold. But what we're doing is, because each villager is 3, you don't really have much choice. You have to go for the cookie cutter build, and it just makes the early game so much more streamlined and easy. So probably the most complex part of this build order is coming up now, which is at 25 gold, you need to drop a mana. That's something that you really need to remember, otherwise you'll get pop blocked, and because the villagers train so slowly, you might get quite far behind. So that is something that is very good to note. Now, the next villager will move on to a new food source. If you have loads of food in your starting line of sight, like you have 3 rhinos or 2 hippos, whatever, it's something that's above 1,000, then you absolutely can just jump on the same food source. But it's just a good idea to know that you might need to move out to a second food source. What we're looking for now is we're looking for 100 gold, and as soon as we get 100 gold, we want to move the gold villager onto building the temple, because that is the next crucial bit. Then after that, you want to put your food. You want to put your next villager, which has come out, on either hunt or goats. My hunt is really far away, so what I've done is I've moved them onto one of the goats, just so we can get up to the next stage in a good amount of time. So we get the 400 food just before the 430 mark, which is perfect, and then we will rearrange the villagers as per my guide, which is also on my Discord. But it's 232 if you want to know now. Next up is the 4-minute build order, and this is if you have no hunt in your starting line of sight. With the Atlantean civs, so that's Kronos, Aranos, and also Gaia, what I like to do is commit to what you see within your starting line of sight. Like if I was to find hunt now, I don't want to build the economic guild and walk my slow citizens over, so what I do is I just commit to this build without hunting dogs. And it also means you don't need to build the economic guild, because your villagers don't need to drop off any of the resources, so it just makes it super easy. If you really wanted to, you could just follow this build on any map, and at least you would get to the classical age at a decent time, just not as efficient. So the first villager moves over to the food source. It could be berries, it could also be chickens. Both don't count as a good hunt source, so it's just food that's readily available. And then the third one also goes there too. This is a very easy build to follow, and it is a great beginner build, but also it's just the build that you need with the Atlanteans, because as I said, there isn't much variance that you really can do, apart from moving them onto food for 5 seconds or wood for 10 seconds or whatever, but that's just getting a little bit funny. When you get to 15 out of 15 population, you need to do the same as the last build, and you want to build a house. then the villager that comes, and then that villager moves on to food. So we'll have four food. Then the next villager that comes out needs to do something slightly special, which is a little bit weird, which is chop the tree for just 5 wood, which should just be one whack. So she knocks it down, and then she should do 1 whack, and then she has enough wood to build the temple. And then from here, we should hopefully get enough food to advance to the classical age. If not, then we have the goat here, which is a great Atlantean trick to do, which is move over goats to either your wood or your gold villagers, just so you have the perfect food number to hit the next stage. We will get there for the 355, and that's the perfect for 255 for the perfect 355 advance time. Not all maps let you have that. Some will go up to 4 minutes, but a 4-minute advance time is perfectly fine. Okay, so the first 2 builds are the only ones that you really need, as they are the best builds for Atlanteans. But these 2 are just some fun extra builds that I think would be great in your games against the AI or some fun games that you do online. Mainly some team games is actually really good for this build. So this is the Atlantean 2 town centres in the Archaic Age build, as they're the only civ that can build town centres in the Archaic Age. So it's just a fun strat to do. It starts off similar to the 430 build, where you put 2 villagers on the hunt straight away. You get the economic guild, you get the hunting dogs. But for this build, you need a lot of hunt. So whereas the first build, if you have hunt in your starting line of sight, it's absolutely fine. This one is slightly different, where you would need around 1,200, 1,300 food, or basically just 2 hunt sources is the best way to look at it. So this, we have the rhinos and we have the gazelles. If you had the rhinos and then the gazelles were a short walk, that is also fine, but you just need a decent amount of hunt to pull off this build. So the first 2 move over to the food, the third one moves over to the wood, just as the 430 build. What I'm doing with the oracles is I'm scouting the settlements just to see which one's better. This map, you would always choose the close one, because the middle ones are just really far away and you're just asking to get hurt, basically. But as I'm Aranos, this is a great thing with him, is you can see the settlements, so you can just walk over to it, leave your guy on it for 30 seconds, and then he can scout the whole thing. Nice and easy. So the 4th villager moves over to the gold, and at the magic 25 gold number, we want to build the manor. So hit your E button or whatever your hotkey is, or just hover over the manor button. But it's just nice to have houses and manors on a hotkey. It's just really useful. So this is where this build will actually differ, because we don't need any more food. The 2 villagers is more than enough to create more villagers. So we're moving the next villager over to the gold. Then the one after that will move over to the wood, because we want to get enough wood and gold to build our town centre. I've just made my scouts kind of scout around for this without really paying much attention to them, but you can move them or you can leave them still. It's whatever your preference is, really. If you move them efficiently, then it is slightly better, but if you're not going to pay attention to them, you can just leave them. As soon as they make their wavy stick noise, you just move them along. It's nice and easy. Atlanteans are the best, a beginner-friendly civ of any. So the magic numbers that we're looking for now is 100 food, 275 wood, 275 gold. But also the Atlantean citizens are very slow. So I think I moved over slightly before that. I think it was 260 gold and 240 wood, something along those lines, is when you want your villager to move over. You will definitely have enough food if you have the 2 villagers on there, so that's absolutely fine. Now the villagers, we want to move them over to the food, because now we want the 400 food to hit the classical age. The villager moved over from gold. I should have probably mentioned that if I didn't, because we don't need much gold now, because all we need is the gold to advance. I went to do something there that you don't really need to do, move over one of the villagers from the wood. That's just getting a more efficient advance time, but it isn't as easy of a build, so I decided to just stay on the wood and do the build as I've written down. Once you get 100 gold, you want to drop the temple with the gold villager, and as soon as that temple is done, you should have enough food to advance. If you don't, you can stop the auto queue and wait, or if you're really far off, you could build an extra villager, but you might be quite far behind because this is a late advance time, but it is a fun build to do. Good for those boomy games. Now for the last build. if you were around in 2004, which is probably when this build was very prevalent, this is the Krush. So this is the Kronos Rush. This build is terrible, but it is fun to just do on occasion. But it's very easy to defend against if you know what you're doing. So this is similar. So this build you want to do if you don't have any hunt, because normally that means that your opponent will be far behind because they won't have got the hunting dogs, and you just advance so quick that you can put the pressure on them. So what we're doing is we're basically slapping every villager that you possibly can onto food, and the reason that my guys are doing the scouting in a manual fashion is because the macro you don't need to think about like at all. It's just food, mana, temple. So that means that you can be efficient with these guys and actually move them around. Maybe it is a little bit taxing, and you also can just leave them there, but it's just something good to get used to, because it is a little bit more efficient, especially on these maps where if there's no starting hunt, then there's lots of goats normally. So this build is 3 villagers to food. Then your next one builds a manor, one of the food villagers builds a temple. Then you get 1 more food villager out, which I put on the goats just because it's slightly less of a walking time. And it should be coming out now. I moved a goat over there, really didn't need to. My guys will now get into the position around the enemy base because they would need enough line of sight to time shift the temple. So the last villager we want to have on the goats and then cancel the auto queue, because we don't need it, because we're not building any more villagers. This is why this build isn't that great, because it isn't as efficient as other ones. Your guys will finish up on the food, and you want to split them between wood and gold, and then get your extra villagers to go on the goats when they can come out. Before 66%, which I think is the number from my short that I made, you want to put the temple over using the time shift and get your Prometheans out and start hacking away at the enemy. It isn't great, but it is just a fun little build to do. As I said before, all of these builds will be available on my Discord. The link will be in the description. If you have any questions about build orders, let me know, and see you in the next one.